to pull up the session on some other laptop and hopefully all my plugins are up to date. And, it's just like, because of the workflow of that, because I know that versatility is something that my clients need. And so it's up to me to figure out the best way to do that,
Yeah, totally. So it sounds like you're all in the box, running native plugins to the best of your ability.
Yes. And that's been the last couple years. I have a bunch of outboard, stuff that I just haven't, when I moved studios, I just never ended up unpacking it. A whole bunch of 500 series stuff, really nice. I had a whole master bus chain that I kind of ran everything through. But again, just if I needed to do an alternate print of something, I would have to come to the studio to do that. There's so many times an artist I work with will sign a publishing deal and the publishers want alternate mixes or stems or something of a mix that we did 3 years ago, and so I have to be able to pull that up and recall and all that kind of stuff. So just, I respect the people that still do hybrid stuff. And there are times where I'll use outboard stuff, but I always print it into the session pretty much right away. Like I'll run a vocal out to something, I'll find a sound, print it back in. Now that's my new vocal track. And that's just the way it is now. And it's not something that's recallable. It's just something that's in the session now forever.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah. I mean, I'm in the box also, and I don't have fancy outboard gear, but I mean, that seems like the way to do it. Like, I just don't know how anybody deals with it with the recalls these days. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's just constantly just reopening it, and you need it right away. Like, people have fancy consoles they just record into, and that's it,
I think it can be like genre dependent, and, like everyone's got different workflows, and if the workflow works for them, then that's totally fine. But I just, with my clients and the type, jumping between genres so much, it would be way too much work to do recalls. And I just, and again, it's me deciding my own lifestyle and saying, I want everything to be accessible on my laptop so that if something does have to happen at 10 o'clock at night, I can just quickly do it and get back to hanging out with my wife or doing what I was, I don't want to be at the beck and call of my clients needing to drive back into the studio and print something off.
Yeah.
And I don't also want to say no. I don't want to say, sorry, I can't do that. Like, too bad, you're going to miss your deadline because I, have outboard gear.
Yeah. Amazing. That's a great soundbite. I love it. Yeah, amazing. So let's jump a little bit into your approach to mixing. What I noticed when I was listening to your mixes on your website and stuff was just like massive low end. You seem to have that really dialed in. Tell us about your approach to low end, if you have a philosophy or any approaches that you use. I know you're mixing on smallish speakers, right?
Well, I've recently changed my speakers. I was
right. I saw you're on ATCs now. I saw on Instagram.
Now. Yeah. So I was a NS10
I'll let you talk now.
plus sub.
Oh, okay.
I was an NS10 plus sub guy for the longest time. Yeah, as I started to trim back the outboard gear and just kind of really focusing on the essentials of, is my computer capable enough to do everything I want it to do? What are my speakers telling me? And then the room. And that's kind of, I feel like a lot of mixers in our generation are starting to kind of move towards that, where it's like small desk, really good speakers, dial your room. Cause I wanted a clear window I want to know what's actually on my hard drive. Like, what are these files that are getting sent to me? And I want the clearest window into what's happening. And NS10s are not the clearest window. Like, I love them and I've gotten to know them, and I understand. My big thing on them is I understand what a record was supposed to sound like coming out of NS10s. I understood what a snare drum was supposed to sound like on NS10s, what a bass guitar, how the cones were supposed to be moving for me to know that there was enough low end in there. And so that translation was huge, but it just wasn't a clear window. Yeah. One of my best friends is a professional photographer, and we talk about our entrepreneur careers all the time together, because they're very similar in production and sure. photography. And his big thing is like, if he's color correcting a photo, like, he needs to know that his screen is true. Is true. He needs to understand, like, what the reds are coming off of that screen. And it's the same with monitoring, like, And
Yeah.
it's so I went on a monitoring journey for a while. I was trying some PMCs and just lots of high end monitors, and I landed on ATCs. Just coming from NS10s, just the mid range is the most important thing to me. So having the mid range driver in these ATCs is just on another level. But yeah, low end. Just going back to your original question. Sorry, I ramble a lot.
No, but I love the monitoring thing. The thing, I'm with you about like getting the rooms good monitors, and that's it. Just like making sure you can hear clearly. And what you said reminded me of my interview with Andrew Mari, who was basically saying he works on ATC 25s also, and he was saying I think he uses the attack wall to kind of treat his room. Yes. It's just like with the attack wall and the ATC 25s, I can hear exactly what's happening in the low end, and that's how I'm able to kind of get my low end to hit so well. It's just hearing it,
Well, low end is it's one of the most important things in my opinion. Like nothing trumps the vocal and the rhythm of whatever drum, whether it's a drum set or drum element is most important. And then I would say the low end is because the low end is where all the emotional energy comes from. Like you can have a really aggressive sounding song, but if the low end doesn't have any, it sounds cheesy, but if the low end doesn't have any weight, then the song doesn't have any weight. Like whatever they're singing about or whatever they're talking about doesn't have the gravitas and the weight if the low end isn't there and isn't right.
It's the floor of the house. You know what I mean?
It's the foundation.
You gotta have a floor.
I hate all these things that these cliches that people say, but they're not wrong.
They're not wrong.
They don't come from nowhere. Yeah, low end is making sure that the lower octave is activating enough, and in pop and hip hop stuff, that's pretty easy because normally that's dialed. The kick's insanely low, the 808s are insanely low. So it's in those genres, it's a lot more of shaping, and sometimes it's more about getting the low end to speak in the higher octaves a little bit so that it's more audible. Getting it to translate to smaller speakers, iPhones, iPads, AirPods, all that Apple stuff.
Unfortunately, yeah.
But it's fine. Like, engineers sometimes get into the trap of thinking that the way that people consume music or the types of music they want to listen to is like right or wrong. And it has nothing to do with that. Like people want to listen to what they want to listen to, and they want to listen to it in the way that they want to listen to it. And it's up to us to respect that and to cater to that. It's no different than film people trying to do something for the way that we want to watch our movies. Like I haven't gone to the theater in a couple of years now. I'm forced to watch movies on either my TV or my iPad. And so, I've run into this trouble of 5.1 or Atmos or whatever these mixes are down mixed to the point where the sound effects are 10 times louder than the voice, and I can't, and so the way that content's getting produced is negatively affecting my experience as a consumer or as a listener. Right. And I don't want that to happen to my listeners. I don't want them to listen on their iPod or AirPods that they love, that they, and miss out on an experience from the song just because I'm being all high and mighty and say, well, you should buy better headphones. Like you should be listening on something that has real bass. Yeah. So, I'm going to punish you as the mixer. It's dumb.
I think there's a big difference between AirPods and like the iPad speaker, right? But fair enough.
Of course.
Right. The AirPods have stereo field. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But it's interesting. But what you're saying is super important. I think it's like what a lot of people are missing with this whole Atmos thing is like, and I recently spoke with a guy named Matt Ruffino. He said like, listen, my kids have never asked me for one speaker, let alone 13. You know what I mean? Like people are listening on iPads. You know what I mean? Like you could be doing more damage than good.
Yeah. Some of the labels that I work with are starting to ask for Atmos versions of the songs now.
Interesting. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm kind of like, all right, am I going to invest, $40,000 in a 15 speaker setup to be able to accommodate this? Whereas I'm having a little trouble seeing, well, like you said, unless they are able to refine the down mixing to headphones, because I don't see anyone aside from 0.01% of the population actually having an Atmos capable listening environment. with speakers.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyone that's experiencing Atmos content is going to be a binaural recreation in headphones.
Yes.
Which is totally fine. And that could be really cool. The Atmos mixes I've heard in headphones, spatial audio and the Apple ones, I much prefer the stereo versions. I don't think the Atmos recreations are what the mixing engineers intended. I could be wrong in that. I'd have to listen to their Atmos.
You're leaving a lot to algorithms, right?
Yeah, we're leaving everything to it's all algorithms, right? And
right.
And I don't know. I just don't know if I see a future where more than 1% of the population is experiencing Atmos the way that me as the technician and the mixer, but more importantly, the artist that I'm trying to mix for wants their listener to experience it,
Yeah. It sounds like Laserdisc, back in the day.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing because I know everyone's all abuzz about it and it's all very exciting right now. And I'm definitely keeping an eye on it. But I think your other podcast guest is right in saying I haven't heard anyone yet saying I'm not going to listen to this song unless it's an Atmos version, or I want I want that we need to get an Atmos version in this house, Dad, so that we can listen to all the new stuff. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, the only compelling thing is it's like, hey, stereo was new once. Before that it was mono. You know what I mean? I hear that.
Yeah, but then quadraphonic tried to show up and that didn't really work, and 5.1 music mixing tried to happen and that didn't really work, and that's mainly because of consumers' desire to and it's not different from the workflow conversation we just had half an hour ago, where it's like the consumers own they're not going to go out of their way to have a slightly better experience listening. Like they're just going to do what they do, whether it's listen on their iPhone or listen on their headphones. And
been listening to MP3s for a decade and a half or 2 decades or whatever, however long it's been. And
as much as we want it to be up to us how they listen, it's just not the case. And so we
could try to dictate that, but we're not going to.
No. And so unless cars start doing Atmos, because I see cars being a good spot. They can put speakers in the roof and they can actually have
true.
Atmos in cars. And then the headphone binaural thing. Those are kind of the only 2 spots that Atmos can really kind of start to take over. But again, leaving it all to algorithms. It's tough listening to a mix that is being decoded from an Atmos, whatever it is, 13.1 or 13.2.1 down to a binaural recreation and hearing it and saying, I can guarantee that's not what the mixer wanted for this, because everything sounds out of phase. The low end has lost all of its impact. I've heard the stereo version of this. I know how great the low end is on this song, and it's not being represented in this, current version.
Yeah,
so,
I need to listen to more, but from what I've heard, I only heard a bit. But what I did heard was that the low end just doesn't slap the same way. If that makes any sense.
It can't because
right,
there's all this phase trickery, and to go back and answer your previous question about how to get good low end, so much of it is phase. Everyone focuses on these
get
phase
into
enhancement plugins, but it's as simple as your speakers are trying to go like this. And there's one thing that's telling the speaker to go like this, and there's one thing that's telling the speaker to go back, and the speaker just goes bleh, and it flubs, and it's just that simple physics, And so the phase of your 808 versus your kick, or your multiple kicks, or so many producers will send me like 7 kick drum layers for and I'll just end up picking the best one and just using that and building off of that, because the phase relationship of all of these different phase misaligned things just causes a low end disaster.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
When you try and spread what's often a mono, because a lot of times in a stereo mix, the lowest of the low end is coming out in mono, or maybe a stereo in the upper sub or the low bass. When you try and spread that out into some kind of Atmos craziness, and you try and the algorithm tries to decode that, it's just naturally gonna get out of phase and get weird.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's really cool. So when you're mixing, low end, I guess, are you doing any phase alignment, like, between the kick and the bass, the kick
Sure.
and other kick samples, like,
Yeah.
like just